energy disruptors. Please welcome to the stage, Foyer.
Okay. Yeah, let me just put this here. Okay. Hope that the rest of the panel goes better than it started. I'd like to welcome you to our panel this afternoon. And it could really go by another name, which is Innovators Unleashed, How to Launch a New Industry. Because really that is what we're gonna tackle with today's panel. I'm sure this is a question that many of you in the audience have thought, which is, how do you take an idea and turn it into a sustainable business? What does it take to take a pilot project and scale it into wide adoption? So our three panelists are more than capable of helping answer this. So I'd like to welcome to the stage, first, Mina Zarabian. She is the CEO and co-founder of Carbonova. Secondly, we have Heather Stevens, who is the COO of Emissions Reduction Alberta. And lastly is Patrick Elliott, COO of Carbon Alpha. Before we begin, I thought I would draw attention to the fact that Mina brought a bag of candy onto stage with her.
It's real good, Kami.
So we have a really interesting lineup here today. We really have three pieces of the innovation flywheel. So Mina, her company does carbon utilization. She's a technology developer. Patrick, his company does carbon sequestration. They're a project developer. And Heather represents public investment and acceleration. So these are really three key parts of the innovation flywheel. By way of introduction, my name is Foyer. I'm Vice President of Orennia. We're a data and insights company. Now, before I get our panelists to introduce themselves and their companies, I'll just outline how this panel is going to go. First, we're going to have introductions. Then we're going to talk about how each one of their technologies or organizations fits into the broader energy landscape. Then we're going to get into that key question. How do you take that idea and turn it into a sustainable business? And then lastly, have an open discussion about innovation. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Mina.
Hello, everyone. I am Mina Zarabian, CEO, co-founder of Carbonova. Carbonova is a spin-off company from University of Calgary. And we are CO2 or carbon utilization company. More specifically, we convert carbon dioxide and methane or greenhouse gases into tangible solid carbon materials that goes to a variety of applications. We are working with customers to use our materials in composite application for polymer, for reinforcing plastics, for reinforcing composite for construction materials, and also for conductive materials for lithium-ion battery application. Started the company 2019 out of the university, had a proof of concept, scaled up the technology over 100 times, built a pilot plant, scaled the team to nearly 16, 17 full-time employees, and we are now heading into building our first commercial demonstration unit here in Alberta. Multiple patents granted in different jurisdictions, and we are working with different customers to reiterate and build functional prototype on their end and doing field tests with customer.
Perfect. Heather.
Yeah, thanks. Exciting year for us at Emissions Reduction Alberta. We're 15 years old this year, and we really work for companies like Mina over here, who's in our portfolio. Really, we run funding challenges and run programs that focus on not only catalyzing investments and reducing emissions, but also help us with our economic growth and jobs here in Alberta. So 15 years old, what have we accomplished? We have over 300 projects in our portfolio. We've committed $1 billion as of this year, which is an exciting milestone. And because of our leverage, which we're particularly proud of, it's sort of a 7-to-1 leverage ratio. What's really impressive is that this will contribute about 46,000 jobs to Alberta by 2027 and about $7 billion to the GDP in Alberta. So exciting numbers. We're in it for the economy, but we're also in it for the emissions. And so our impact to date is forecasted to be 42 megatons by 2030 and grows to over 120 by 2050. And we are technology and sector agnostic. We fund across technologies, look at all the sectors, oil and gas, electricity, forestry, and our money is sourced from the Tier Fund here in Alberta through the Government of Alberta, and we reinvest that back in deployment, first-of-kind demonstration, and pilot projects that are demonstrated here in Alberta. So thanks for having me.
Perfect. And Patrick.
Sure. Great to be here. Thanks very much for having us on the panel. Carbon Alpha was the genesis of an idea. My business partner, Simon Bergazzi, and I were winding up a company that we co-founded in 2014 called Jupiter Resources. We were repurposed oil and gas people, and we thought there was an opportunity to go into energy transition and take the skills from the subsurface type of work we do in upstream energy and bring that to energy transition, and specifically carbon capture and sequestration, which a lot of skills are really necessary for. We started talking to a lot of large industrial emitters and found that these companies, other than the oil and gas companies, had decarbonization aspirations, but they really didn't have the team or the skill set to execute those programs. And so we built a company to do that. And we were very fortunate to bring over 6 of our technical folks from Jupiter Resources with skill sets in geology, geophysics, reservoir engineering, process engineering, pipeline engineering, et cetera. And we started the company in February of 2021, so we're 3.5 years old. We worked for a lot of large industrial emitters initially. The Government of Alberta allocated carbon storage tenure, and we helped specifically a group of Heartland Generation to develop their strategies. And we also supported some other large industrial emitters who are looking to accelerate their decarbonization strategies. We now have what we think is the largest team of technical professionals dedicated to carbon storage projects in Canada. And most recently, we've moved into developing carbon removal projects in the form of BECCS projects, which is bioenergy carbon capture and storage. And our flagship project is a project we call North Star, and it's in partnership with First Nation Meadow Lake Tribal Council in Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan. So there's a quick overview of how we got to where we are today.
Perfect. So I want to talk a little bit more about how each one of your organization fits in the broader energy landscape. Mina, I'll start with you. I want to hear your thoughts on carbon utilization. So this is not new to people. We currently already use hundreds of millions of tons of carbon dioxide every year. Lots of it's in fertilizer and food and beverage. But as we look forward, we're going to have to capture tens to hundreds of times those volumes in the future. And so we either have to sequester it or use it. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on carbon utilization and where you see that sector going.
For sure. Traditionally, the way that we humans work with waste or emission was somehow send it far from us, either up to the sky, down to the earth. We want to hide it. And that has been the way that we have paying cost for it one way or another. But more and more as the society is becoming conscious, the tax becoming a more important piece of our decision making and sustainability being pushed, then other innovation and solutions are becoming more important. As you mentioned, CO2 has been utilized in different industries, but one of the challenges that has been always in front of CO2 utilization was, we call it mass balance issue. The world requires more energy, and if we create CO2 out of that energy, the amount of CO2 that can be used in different chemicals and materials is always lower because the world requires more energy than the world requires chemicals and materials. So that has been a challenge to close that cycle. But as technologies grow and we're becoming more conscious of creating the materials, creating chemicals from innovative way as CO2, with CO2, that becoming more boosted into our innovation ecosystem. At Carbonova, we have a different model of thinking. We say we turn carbon dioxide into tangible product, into something that you can hold in your hand and you can build as a building block, exactly like a Lego, that you can build anything out of that. It's a new tool in the toolkit of scientists. As we are observing the changes that is happening in the ecosystem of CO2, we're seeing that we got to have a wide variety of solutions. In some locations, storing of CO2 may not be as applicable as in Alberta. So it's very important as we build the whole ecosystem of turning CO2 into the longest life of storing CO2 into chemicals and materials.
Perfect. So that's on the utilization side. Patrick, you're more on the storage side, and Carbonova, you're pursuing a technology that is very new to Canada, BECCS, the bioenergy, carbon capture, and storage. So I wanted you to talk to us a little bit about financing it. I know there was this big announcement last week by Drax, which is a British power generating company, and they announced $12.5 billion into BECCS projects in the United States. But to date, nothing in Canada. So how do you see financing your project, and what is it going to take to grow the energy, to grow the industry?
Well, I think that on the capital side, the investment tax credits that the Canadian government and provincial government have put in place are going to be very supportive. Grants obviously are going to be a very important part of that project too. Unfortunately, my project's in Saskatchewan, and Heather can't help me with that. And then soon. And then private investment. And private investment is just so critical for the sustainability of really all of this energy transition. And for private investment to really flow, they need to make a reasonable rate of return. And that's based on revenues. Revenues are going to be generated in the BECCS space with carbon removal credits or carbon removal certificates. And those certificates are purchased by private, public companies, organizations that want to offset their emissions that they otherwise can't offset in hard-to-abate sectors. Think airlines as an example. So it's necessary for that marketplace to develop, that organizations can come to the marketplace and buy these offsets to generate the revenue, and they need to be at such a price that it can generate a reasonable rate of return to attract that investment into the sector. And what we've seen to date is the growing importance of the role of the carbon registries. Carbon registries are institutions that go around and validate the project. So for instance, a project that we're working on in Meadow Lake just got listed by a carbon registry today on a preliminary basis, which is really important. It's the first one on their registry in Canada. Very excited about that. And what that does is give buyers confidence that the project meets all of the criteria for carbon removal. And as investors get more confidence that their dollars are going towards a project that actually will remove that carbon in a durable and permanent manner for the types of projects that we're involved in, I think that will bring in more buyers to that marketplace. At least that's the hope. And I think we've seen that over the last 2 years. That's the good news, is that as that market firms up, it'll bring more buyers in, more confidence, more capital flow. Hopefully, that also starts to steamroll with the investment into those projects. But it's early days, and we expect a lot of turbulence in the next little while as this market starts to mature.
Do you think that big tech, with the AI boom, do you think that they're going to be some of these carbon removal buyers?
Well, we hope so. If you have any big tech friends in the room, come see us. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's going to be a massive build out of power and power demand. And for companies and organizations that are looking to offset their emissions, bioenergy, carbon capture, direct air capture, a number of different formats are going to be useful for those groups to offset those emissions should they choose to.
Right. Now, Heather, I find your perch in Alberta very interesting because you not only get to see the carbon utilization and the storage, you get to see all the different technologies that are out there, all the developing companies in Alberta, and it's a really important role. Canada, or Alberta, on one hand, we punch above our weight in terms of things like economic output, wealth generation, but at the same time, we also punch above our weight in terms of emissions. So just oil and gas and heavy industry in Alberta alone accounts for a quarter of Canadian emissions. So there is this fine balancing act of how do you reduce emissions while keeping the prosperity within the province, and the ERA is a big part of that. So I wanted to hear about what you think are the big industries that are coming for Alberta, and what does really the next 5 years look like?
Yeah, great question. Carbon management, it comes as no surprise, given I'm sitting in between, sandwiched in between two people intimately involved in carbon management. So I think not only on the utilization as well as on the storage, we have this immense opportunity in Alberta to catalyze what we've already been doing and operating for a decade. And so we have all of the things that I've already talked about. We also have an opportunity in looking at what we do from the bitumen as well. And so with some of the projects in our portfolio are around looking at other uses and turning those into carbon fibers as well. So things, same utilization that Mina's working on, but using a different source product. I think if you've been at this conference all day today, you've heard a lot about AI and the power of AI, not only to the power it's going to need to power itself, but also the power that it will have in changing the technologies that we're using. It's going to be insidious in all the technology solutions that are being developed. And so the need for clean power is at our doorstep. And I think a lot of the work we're doing as well as in emerging energy. And so what are some of those clean sources of stable and reliable power looking like? So looking at things like nuclear opportunities, while that's not going to get built in 5 years perhaps, it's starting to lay the groundwork for some of those opportunities that we have in front of us, as well as, I'll quote one of my colleagues, but smartifying the grid, and so all of the technologies that we'll need to make sure that we've got the best grid out there and enables this clean energy that we need to come. And then I think finally it's also about industrial decarbonization. What are some of the processes or the new opportunities that we have in front of us? And I also sat through a lithium panel this morning that talked all about the novel extraction technologies that we're going to need to be able to use those critical minerals for the battery storage that we know we're going to need. And so really important technology investments across the board. I'll also put in a bit of a plug. We have what's called a technology roadmap, and we've had 4 iterations publicly available in the past. We're just about to launch our 5th iteration, and it really walks you through our core areas that we're interested in. So some of them I've already discussed, as well as energy efficiency. Circular economy is really important and really plays into it. Mina was talking about taking those waste products and turning them into a valuable product that can be reused. This document's coming out in the next few weeks, so I really encourage you to keep your eyes out for that and dive into it. It's not we work really hard to make it a short document because it's a lot harder to make a short document, but we think it's a really good opportunity to look at what we think the opportunities are in Alberta and the landscape might look like. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Perfect. One of the great services that the ERA does is it really helps developing companies turn into well-oiled machines to thrive out in the world. And that is a really big challenge that a lot of companies face, is how do you go from that idea to that sustainable business? So I want to talk a little bit about that, Patrick, maybe I'll start with you. Carbonalpha's been on a great journey. One of my favorite quotes in business is change before you have to, and Carbonalpha has changed its strategy. You started out as the advisors helping other companies with their decarbonization projects, and now you've shifted to now where you're the developer. So I wanted to ask 2 questions. 1, why the switch? And 2, why BECCS? BECCS is not done in Canada at all, so what was so compelling about that technology?
Yeah, we absolutely started to focus out on what we thought was an obvious use case to help large industrial emitters contemplate decarbonization plans so they could avoid carbon tax. And so if you're thinking about your future tax obligations, you might undertake CCS to avoid that. One of the things that exists currently is that we've got this uncertainty gap between what is the carbon price today and what is the proposed carbon price in 2030, which is $170 a ton. That's not legislated at this time, and so there's companies that are struggling putting together their economics without actually knowing what that carbon price is how it's going to materialize. There's lots of agencies out there like the Canada Growth Fund that are helping bridge that uncertainty gap, and so those projects are going ahead. But there's a lot of other projects that without that support really can't move ahead. And so to us, there was a fragility in that strategy of waiting on and relying on large industrial emitters to make that decision to go make those projects. And so we always stayed in the advisory role to support their project development. But about 1.5 years ago, we started thinking about carbon removal space, and we're very fortunate to come across the Meadow Lake Tribal Council that not only owns forestry tracts that they manage, a harvesting company, a sawmill, and a bioenergy center that they built 2 years ago and commissioned and had up and going. And so we saw the opportunity to add CCS to that to develop BECCS. And then as we learned more about that project and learned more about the opportunity set and could see the pathway through to other forestry opportunities throughout Western Canada, this has become one of our central focus on this. And from a carbon removal perspective, how this mechanism works, in essence, trees absorb CO2, CO2 is processed into lumber, the waste goes into the bioenergy center, it produces power and steam for the facilities, and they also sell some to the grid. And then if we add CO2 capture to that and then store it permanently, essentially you've removed it out of the atmosphere and stored it into the subsurface. And so that's the whole concept of these bioenergy with carbon capture BECCS projects. And so with this project that we're working on right now, and if we proceed on the timeline that we're on, it could be one of Canada's first projects in BECCS. And we're getting a lot of interest from forestry, because forestry sees this as an opportunity for them to play a role in sustainability and to also diversify some of the revenue streams. So we see this as an opportunity that we're pursuing, and now we have a strategy where we're both supporting large industrial emitters in an advisory role, and then also trying to develop our own projects. And in these projects, we'll actually lead the development of the entire project, also raise the capital for the project, and have ownership into the project as well. So, when you're in a new industry, you try to find your way through it, and we've evolved into this situation that we find ourselves in, but we like this dual-pronged strategy. And that's how we expect to continue to run our business in the coming years.
Well, I'm glad you used the phrase evolve. Mina, you and I, when we were chatting before, we talked about the different phases, the evolution that a business goes through. And there's a particular phase that's quite notorious called the Valley of Death. And it's when, correct me if I'm wrong, operations have started, but revenues really haven't picked up to be sustainable. So I wanted to hear from you on what are the different phases that startups go through, and what is the key to surviving the Valley of Death?
They say entrepreneurship is the border of fearless and naiveness. So getting too close sometimes to that valley of death. Hardcore technologies are known to be capital intensive, and they do have normally pretty long payout time. With the changes in the capital market and interest rate being still high, capital market has been less accepting those type of long time risk and capital intensive. So the opportunities for hardcore technologies has been less and less to go through mega rounds to turn the technologies from the phase that it was developed out of the universities or research center or garage, whatever, and turn it into a scalable size that can generate revenue. So as this shift is happening from the risk tolerance from financial institutions, as a society, we should be aware that every of these hardcore technologies fail, we got to pay for the cost of that. It's going to be longer term to get to the sustainability target that we have. We're going to pay more, and that should create empathy for us as a society to look how we can support hardcore technologies to be passing through Death Valley. And what we have learned over these last 2 years is being able to distribute the risk and opportunity, and I say intentionally opportunity because every of those groups that are taking risk, they are also having that opportunity, and being able to distribute the risk, you're reducing the risk, but also you are distributing the opportunity between 3 groups, I would say. One is financial institutions, the second is government organizations like what Heather team are working on, and the third group are the first champion type of customers that they are willing to be the first in the market. They want to be not the first to be second, not the second to be first, but they want to really be the first, and they are willing to take that risk. And through that, you can generate that momentum among these 3 groups and break that chicken and egg problem that is normally usually the reason of Death Valley, and that could be a way to navigate and build a bridge over Death Valley.
Right. Well, and you bring up the role of government. Government is often good at helping to deal with long-term problems that kind of feel amorphous, and so the ERA is perfect for that. So Heather, I wanted to ask you a couple questions. Like, one, what is the ERA's role? And 2, you've seen now hundreds of companies. Is 200 companies that have been invested in?
Over 300.
Over 300. So now you've seen 300 plus companies come through. What is the key to long-term success?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had the secret sauce for everything and the answers, but the reality is what we talk about at ERA is it's about complete solutions. So here you have innovators with great ideas and active projects, and it needs more than just one good, smart idea. So you need a policy and a regulatory framework that support the projects that you're going to do. You need strong leadership on your team. You need customers that are going to come. And in order sometimes to get those customers, you have to build trust, because if we're working in innovation, sometimes these things haven't been done before. And it can be scary for all of the markets or new markets that are emerging. So building those out takes a suite of people and partners. So collaboration, I would say, is really key to the work that we do to make sure that everybody's brought along on the journey of innovation. And so, you know, the role of our funding, I think, also provides those proof points. So when you're looking at first-of-kind demonstration or things that have never been done before, like the project that you're doing, Patrick, it's about having those proof points that then you can shop around. So you can say, look, this does work. This works in the field. It works in cold temperatures. It works in the kinds of real-world scenarios that you're going to work with. And I think that really, that first money in is really important. And so not only does this help buy down their project costs, because we're non-dilutive funding, it also lends credibility often to their project, that then they can take that to financing organizations to say, ERA's put their money in, and now I need a bit more, but it's a way for them to have the conversation in a different way, I think, when you have this credible, independent party that's looked at your project and said, yes, we're willing to put some money in. So
Perfect. Well, I see we have about 1 minute left on the panel. So maybe since entrepreneurship and innovation is so key to Alberta right now, hoping to inspire some of our listeners into the panel, why don't we go down and you can each say what you love about innovation.
Meeting a lot of great champions within the organizations and being able to collaborate and constantly learning, being on that journey of roller coaster, that it's fun, it's exciting, and being optimistic that as we collaborate, we're going to solve this problem. It's a challenge ahead of us, but it's also an opportunity.
Yeah, I love that we get to work on a really big, huge global problem. It's a really exciting space, and I firmly believe that we've got lots of tools in our toolkit today, but there's still so many more that are to come, and no day is the same day, so it's an exciting place to work in.
I think I'm basically forced into entrepreneurship because I'd be a terrible employee, hard to manage, not good at keeping track of myself. Yeah, it's so fun when you can create something new that wasn't there before. Having the experience of starting now 3 companies and seeing families being supported by a new business that you've created, and hopefully having an impact in the community and in the country is, I've been really fortunate through my career to be able to do that, and humbled with the people that continue to work with us.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for the great discussion, and please join me in thanking the panelists.